Greetings, guten Tag, Talafalava. To all of you, especially my Knights and Chiefs of the 150 Days War Program and my Snow King Club congregation, SCC1 and SCC2, and everyone that is part of my Crystal Kingdom Church TV private ministry and private monarch on Facebook from Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is Dr. Snow Brown speaking to all of you. Once again, it is a blessed good morning or good evening or good afternoon to all of you on this blessed Sunday, being the 24th of October 2021. And welcome aboard to everyone, as well as congratulations to all of those who started their 6 ROA program, Rules of Applications, yesterday here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, on the 23rd of October 2021 at 6 a.m. And that will conclude or finish on the 16th of December 2021 at 10 p.m. Welcome to you all. Now, as for those that are starting this program that we just started yesterday, abroad or overseas, also a big welcome to you all, and good luck and best of luck to all of you, and hope you'll stick by it, endure and continue on, and keep doing it, keep doing your program. If you make a mistake, just restart, just keep going. You will receive blessings galore and more at the end of your programs. And I tell you right now that by the end of your 6 RA rules, something miraculous, hopefully something miraculous, a renewing of the mind, renewing of your spirit, and also renewing in general, a transformation would have taken place in all areas and aspects of your life. So thank you for sticking by. Thank you for lending me your ears, your hearts, as well as your spirits, and as well as your understanding or intelligence. Anyway, this morning I want to preach about something very important regarding the mystery of my address here at 8th floor McCurdy Walk, Evening Town at Pahat, in the region of Wellington in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Now, my private ministry on Crystal Kingdom Church TV, my Facebook, started in 2016, as a lot of you would have known by now, especially the locals, and especially those that have been giving me hell, that's correct, and have been stalking me and harassing me on my digital devices. They would have gotten to know this noble, or this natural noble pastor very well, in secret, and as well as in public on Facebook, on my Facebook page, where I have often, as you can see, well, I'm a completely different person today. I know that to be the case. Just looking at myself, just listening to my voice, and noticing the big difference. It has been a roller coaster journey ever since this ministry of mine started in 2016. And I can tell you right now that a lot of the videos where I have recorded myself speaking to all of you publicly, that's been posted on my Facebook page, I've noticed that there is a huge difference. I noticed a huge difference. If I compare my recent, a lot of my videos that I posted on YouTube, in comparison to those videos, I can see that I'm definitely a victim of drugging in secret, and a victim of poisoning as well. Because those videos, I can see I look terrible. That's correct. Not only that, I sound terrible as well. That's correct. And it appears to have been, I'm definitely a victim of psychological abuse, so I've discovered, and also of drugging and poisoning and all sorts of arbitrary dictatorships and all sorts of other evil, harmful, what do you call it, dangerous protocols that I've been subjected to. Now, as you all know by now, I am not a gang member. I don't look it, although a lot of you, those that are in gang organisations in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and even the local one that I have been preaching about, that have the connection of the KKK or the white demon, would love to have the idea of me being part of your so-called underbelly world or criminal world. In your dreams, guys. In your dreams, that's correct. Dream on, dream on. Why do I say that? Well, I think the fact that even going back, I recall when I first got banned from university, when I got the 2 years banning, that's correct, and I started protesting there at the War Memorial Cenotaph in Wellington, across from the law faculty of the Victoria University. There was no doubt, and I certainly found this would have happened about 2004, after I'd had a brief holiday in Samoa in 2003 and came back. And I went right back to protesting, of course, but I had already done that beginning of 2003 before my immediate family decided to send me over to Samoa for a holiday. For what appears to be a couple of weeks. They stretched to a month or so. Anyway, there's no doubt that I was drugged. The drugging started. It started from 2004 while I was doing my protesting there in the War Memorial Cenotaph in the Cenotaph in Wellington. That's when I noticed the difference. Fortunately, I wasn't able to keep the pictures, what I looked like, during my protesting back then in 2004. And I can tell you right now, if I have to compare myself, compare what I looked like then and right now, there's no comparison. You would agree with me that there is some evil person or some evil dictator or a group of punks or thugs that have been stalking this noble in private and in secret all this time. That's correct. In the last, say more so in the last 20 years, but it started, so it appears, 25 years, in the connection to Mr. Prick, or Atua Dr. Tavi Talipina back in 96. Now, that particular person, that's correct, is actually an overdue sex offender. He's an overdue offender. That's correct. That has been, enjoying his full privileges. That's being on the loose, on the run. That's correct. And is now a lecturer, so I've heard, or I've last checked. He's now a lecturer at the university in Samoa. Well, of course, he has experience in education. But at the end of the day, he is an associate of the KKK and MNB. That's correct. And he was an associate back in 96. And it's such a shame, and it's such a terrible, sad realization for me to come to conclusion and even to unravel now that he might have actually set up this noble, or myself, this victim, back in 96. And that evil organization that I refer to as MNB and KKK, more so the MNB, the red one, that's correct, whom I have rallies who have connected, to have those sort of connections, might have actually set me up, might have gone through Mr. Prick to set me up back in 96. And it is my belief that it was the case now, if I have to reflect back. Because in 2001, the same organization, MNB, the red one, Red Demon, then went and set me up with one of their members by our computer course, that's correct, where there were only 4 women that, 3 other women, and including myself, that attended the computer course in that year. The 2 married women, myself, and it was a Pākehā woman, a lady, woman, that's correct. And what I didn't know, I had no idea, was one of their setup or applying their harmful protocol. And that was setting me up so that they could start applying their harmful protocols in the future. And after 2001, in 2002, I went to try and study, do my legal studies as a first year student at Victoria University. And that's when things just went downhill. Things just got worse. At the very start, from the beginning of 2002, when I started to study laws for the first time, I got dealt to. They started to apply their harmful protocols. Now, I wouldn't have known why they violated my privacy so much. It was terrible, but I got subjected to a lot of detriments and other harms that then by the end of the year, I ended up getting banned for 2 years, that's correct, from the university. But there was a lot of harmful protocols from that organization that was being applied there at the university. So I now remember, that's correct, why I got dealt to. Now, I've never been a member of the MMB, and I've never been an associate either of that organization, and I've never really sought them out or seek after them. But it looks like back in '96, this person, or this noble, while I was studying at university, that I was being targeted by the organization and its members through Mr. Prick, and also through my uncle, Awhatia Baker in Porirua. Remember, their family had that kind of connection. Our immediate family, we don't have any of those sort of connections. That is correct. So why am I preaching about all of this? Well, I think the mystery is, I've been trying to figure out the mystery as to why. How come that out of 4.8 million citizens in this country, why couldn't you give me a donation? That's correct. And I've been trying to figure out why you people seem to totally be ignorant, that's correct, to my ministry and the importance of me receiving donations during my ministry. And today, of all days, starting yesterday, I kind of figured it out. And that was, well, Yugaran into Samalama, and also the Spirit of my Lord whispered through Mr. Holy Spirit and said, I'm afraid it's something to do with your address. It has something to do with your address, but also it has something to do with the people that are living inside your address, and it has something to do with the elite, and also especially something to do with your rallies and their criminal connections through the MMB KKK. That's correct. And the setup, this whole setup that you're in, and that is, what is the big mystery of this address? Well, Kainga Ora Housing New Zealand is a Crown entity, so I've discovered, under the Crown Entities Act 2004, I think, there's an act that establishes this organisation. Now, that means, as a tenant, we are governed under by the Tenancy Act. These premises at this address are licensed, that's correct, and has bylaws, and are governed by such an act, and are also governed as a Crown entity. Now, if that's the case, we have a minister who is supposed to, this establishment that I'm a tenant of, or inside this building, as part of her portfolio or his portfolio, it's under their administration and their care as well. Now, what makes this case dubious, really shady, but really, really corrupt, is the fact that the government of New Zealand would have the audacity, let alone, the powers, but the authorities to abuse their so-called their laws, in allowing a gang organization such as the local one, the one that is called the Upper Hutt Mob Association, to take up more tenancy inside this address than any other person in this community. And I've done the maths, and it appears that there is possibly about 7 to 8 members inside this address. Now, there are 12 flats inside this so-called two-story level building. Now, there is one address that's vacant. So there's only 11 of us inside. So there's about 7 to 8 of us members, possible members of the local Mongo Mob Gang Association Napahat. So what that means, because there's been a lot of activities, criminal activities, there's been a lot of harmful activities, mostly targeted but directed at this noble during my tenancy. And some of those I have posted on my CKCTV in regards to PDF files, that's correct, where I've recorded and written a lot of correspondences that has actually recorded actual things that have happened at this address. So these are not made up stories. These are actual events. These are actual harmful things that actually happen here. That's correct. And having lived and experienced, among these so-called pests, as I call them. So today I made the realization that Kainga Ora Housing New Zealand, a Crown entity, has converted this address, 8th floor McCurdy Walk, or allowed it, a criminal organisation, to convert this address to a prostitution ring, That is correct. Now, I'm afraid that's very serious. That is a very serious, realization, but also it is not hard to prove in court. It is not hard to prove in court that is the mystery of this address. It has been converted to a prostitution ring. Now, a couple of days ago, I made a few investigations of my own research on Google, on the search engine on my laptop, or let's just say not laptop, my cell phone, on my internet. And I discovered, and I'd written it down, this particular here, that some gangs collect millions of dollars per month selling illegal drugs, trafficking weapons, operating prostitution rings, and selling stolen property. They also launder proceeds by investing in real estate, recording studios, motorcycle shops, and construction companies. So the moment I read that, well, I knew then what the mystery of this address. I knew right away the mystery of 8th floor McCurdy Walk, Evening Town of Pahat, Wellington. And it is a prostitution ring. I am living in a prostitution ring. An address where there is a prostitution ring going on, that's correct, and it's not hard to prove in court. Because if an investigation was to be carried out, it would establish through the telecommunications, and it will also establish that the majority of tenants inside this address are all gang members or are associated or affiliated to a gang organization, and that local gang organization that has its headquarters in this local township is the Mongo Mob Association. And I also did some more research and discovered that this particular association or organization, plus with the black one, that's correct, these two were the first pioneers of gang establishments here in New Zealand. That's correct. But this one is one of the biggest. That's correct. And the irony was that the stats clearly showed that there is a presumption, so we're to presume that there is 8,000 gang members in New Zealand. And this was I discovered. There would have been 18th of May this year. That's what the stats say. But when I started to do my calculations, I suddenly realized that the real number of gang members in New Zealand is now over 100,000. I calculated that with my own calculations and figured it out. And I added the associates, the associates that are not members, but are the ones that help these gang organizations to apply their criminal protocols inside the system. There is now, I'm afraid, over 100,000 gang members plus associates and even affiliated members that you will never know about in your communities. I'm sorry, Aotearoa New Zealand, it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up, because a lot of the peoples that I've been dealt to in the system of New Zealand have not only been ministers, and I don't want to name them, but I think the fact that this address is, is governed by, there's a minister, that's correct, who's got a portfolio. Housing New Zealand, of course, there are a lot of ministers of Housing New Zealand, but there's one in particular that I did lodge a complaint, and I think you would all know that from the documents, and I posted on my church TV, and that is Dr. Megan Woods. That's correct. How disturbing is that? That's very disturbing. Now, do any of you trust the ministers who govern a Housing New Zealand, a Kainga Ora Housing New Zealand organisation that is supposedly a Crown entity? Can you trust? As this case comes to court, because the restraining order is still in the process, and I'm still going to file that restraining order myself. And it's established that the reason why I got harmed so much, so as a victim, not only of slavery, so it appears, and a victim of bondage, and I don't choose to be in bondage, and I don't choose to be in slavery either. I just mind my own business and do my own thing, but I don't expect a bunch of punks, let alone pests, let alone criminals or outlaws, to be in the background, that's correct, pulling all the strings, creating havoc, and also dictating to my privileges and trying to hijack me here at this address. And yet, all in all, the minister who governs or is supposed to be managing this facility through the relevant agency, the relevant officials, are actually the ones that allow this gang organization to establish to convert this address to a prostitution ring. That's correct. Who does that? Well, definitely not a minister. I mean, not unless you want to be sacked and fired from your job. That's correct. Let alone be sued for it. That is disgusting. I know, New Zealand, come on now. The fact that the local community actually allowed it, even this gang organization, which I'm not even a member, nor an associate, and nor do I choose to be part of their establishment, let alone, be an associate of any sort, and yet they allowed them to apply their harmful protocols to dictate to my access to services in the system, especially WINS of all organization. I mean, I'd hate to think that a minister, that Sepuloni, that's correct, that minister would even dictate to my privileges as a noble. That is a no-no, and I'm sorry, but the government of New Zealand is guilty of treasons. It's guilty of treasons. If you allow, say, someone like Stuart Mum, a manager of the Facility of Work and Income, to apply a gang organization, a local gang organization's protocol, so that they could control and dictate to my privileges and treat me like a slave, I'm sorry, let alone like an offender or a criminal or an outlaw, people, I'm going to expect you to go to jailbird for that. That's correct. I'm not going to put up with your rubbish, let alone your unnecessary bullshits. That's correct. No noble like me, and I can tell you right now, no minister either would ever want to endure be targeted by a prostitution ring, let alone a gang organization. For goodness sake, people. New Zealand, if I ask you to pay me a donation, I deserve a donation. Those are my time is is just as important. But don't you dare say that I'm that I'm a whore. That's correct. Or a sex slave, so I don't deserve a donation when I'm not. I might live in this address, but don't you dare make me part of this so-called bullshit that's going on here that I've got nothing to do with. That's correct. I came here as a tenant, and on my tenancy agreement, as far as we're concerned, I never, expected this kind of bullshit to be hijacked, let alone targeted by a bunch of criminals. So as far as I'm concerned, New Zealand, you can all stick it. You can all go to hell. If you think that I ought to become a whore, like the rest of the so-called racist white niggers, brown niggers, black niggers that I've been preaching about, you can dream on. You can dream on. That's correct. I was baptized and saved by the blood of Jesus, and I'm not about to throw all of that down the gurgler, let alone convert myself from a holy person, from a good person to a bad person and an evil person, let alone, that's correct, a sex slave. There are plenty of your slaves that you can damn well study, poke fun at, drug, you name it. You can do what you like with them. But this one is owned by the kingdom and owned by God and Jesus, as well as Queen Snowbound. As for the rest of you, you can find something else to do, that's correct, and focus on your people. But if you're going to take out your frustration and your anger on this noble who's had to put up with a lot of your shits, people, you can stick your te reo, whatever, where the sun don't shine and where the rain don't rain, that's correct. If you people don't create your own intellectual properties and mind your own bizwag, and you stop sticking your nose into other people's affairs where you do not have any business, there's no authority to stick it, find an authority somewhere else where you know you got a right to do so. But in terms of my ministry, my kingdom, and my property, I own the whole lot. And as for the president, whoever you are, you can go to hell as well. But you and your organization and members had better get the hell out of my digital devices and get the hell out of my private spaces and stay the hell out of my life as well. That's correct. Because I have had a guts full of it in the last 25 years of it. Can you imagine how such an organization targeted this noble? In the expectation that I would become a slave, let alone be converted to a sex slave? In your dreams, buddy, that's correct. In your fucking dreams, you son of a bitches. And I mean that well, that's correct. You son of a bitches, that's correct. That's what you are. And I most certainly do not need it. Do not need your bullshit, that's correct, to be part of. And I'll fight hell in tooth, that's right, I'll fight hell. But I'll see you in bloody court. Hopefully, that's correct. And I don't ever want to hear any of you. Let alone see any of you. You have the nerve, that's correct. They have the bloody nerve. You guys are outnumbered. Did you know that? Now, there's another gang in Hong Kong. In the 1950s, there was over 300,000 members, that's correct. And that gang was called the Hong Kong Triads. Now, can you imagine now how, I know we're misled in thinking that there's only 8,000 in New Zealand. And yet when I went to do my calculations, there's over 100,000 of them now here in New Zealand. That's correct. Now, I don't know what the stats are there in Australia, but I can tell you right now, the ones in the States, which is one of the biggest, that's correct, they will kick your ass, but they will bury your asses. And you got no chance. You got no chance. The way I see it, the only reason why the numbers came up to 100,000 was because the numbers of the people of Aotearoa went up over to 800,000 in this country. So when I did the maths, that's correct. That's when I understood where all those millions, why 750 million, was going to the people of Aotearoa. That is correct. And it was because the gangs are dictating to the non-Māoris, especially to the rights of nobles like myself in this country, and only because the government of New Zealand is so fucking racist and so fucking stupid as well. You son of a bitches, that's correct. You fucking motherfuckers, that's correct. You have the fucking nerve, that's correct, to give our privileges and our rights to a bunch of fucking low-life scumbags. You have the nerve. Do you know that the majority of people in gangs have never finished, in fact, they've never been to any kindies. They've never been to primary school. And even if they went to primary school, they never finished it. And at college, they never finished any college either. And when they went to university, it was for all the wrong reasons. Now, come on, ministers, government of New Zealand. I'm not buying any of this. That's correct. Are you getting this through your thick heads? That people like us deserve, that's correct, respect. But we deserve to be treated with dignity. That's correct. But you have the fucking nerve to stick my so-called tendency among a prostitution ring, you motherfuckers. That's correct. You son of a bitches! You have the fucking nerve! Do you think that's funny, eh? Well, Minister Judith Collins, don't you dare make fun of what's been going on here because of the so-called sarcastic comments I heard. That's correct. And that goes for Debbie Packard as well. You better watch it, madam. That's correct. All of you are a bunch of son of a bitches and arrogant. That's correct. How could you allow people like that, that's correct, who are not even qualified and not even sane and not even fit to make decisions, to do what? To hijack us? To try and dictate to our lives and tell us how to run our affairs? You have the fucking nerve. And don't you dictate to my privileges again, whether it be WINS or any other local organization. And for God's sake, Upper Hutt, grow up, will you? That's correct. I am sick and tired of your bullshit. And I don't give a fuck about your te reo either. You know what? You got your millions and your billions. Now go and use your intellectual properties that the government gave you money to create. But leave my intellectual property alone. And don't you fuck with it either. You hear me? You son of a bitches. Somebody ought to smoke your asses. Do you know that? Do I sound like a gangster? Yeah, you wish. You wish. You fucking wish. That's correct. I got no respect for any of you. Do you think I would give a damn about your maraes? If I had the choice, I'd burn down all your maraes. That's correct. Because why? Because all the money that you get from the crown is stolen money. That's correct. But you have the nerve to control my privileges and dictate to my life? You son of a bitches! You can go to hell, you can stick it as well. That's correct. Welcome to my world. That's correct. That's what happens. If I were the people overseas, I wouldn't even bother with any of the minister, let alone the government of New Zealand, that is guilty of violating my rights under the what? The Crime and Torture Act, the Harassment Act, and any other act? My God, I have never come across such arrogant son of a bitches who run the government but are so fucking shady and so fucking racist. That's correct. That if it wasn't for my ministry, the rest of the people of New Zealand, seriously, wouldn't be protected from anything. That's correct. Let alone improve their standards. Let alone do something with themselves. That's right, keep out of trouble and avoid going to prison. Right. I believe I've said enough. That's correct. You all have a very nice Sunday. But like I said, you can all go to hell and you can all stick it as well. I really don't give a damn what you think of this noble. That's correct. It's a good thing that I'm still here in your country, because once I leave your country, well, I can only wonder what's gonna become of your country. It's already in the gurgler. I mean, if you let those sort of outlaw organizations dictate to the likes of nobles like me, I can only wonder. That's great. I'd hate to think that a minister would actually what? Would have sex with the head of those organizations, more like tails of those organizations. That's great. I'd hate to think that. But the fact that you actually abuse and misuse your protocols inside the system to dictate and to control to people like me we are way above your classes. First class, even a German will laugh at the idea, that's great, that a bunch of nobodies who are unqualified, incorrigible, and have got no morals, let alone scruples, have the nerve and the audacity to dictate to somebody who is a first class German. That's great. Let alone a noble Samoa, a full royal. How hilarious. It's funny. That is really funny. Even Mr. Bean will laugh at the idea. I know. At the irony. Right. Well, I guess that's enough, eh? Well, I guess that is my preaching today. And I don't need to refer to any scriptures, because I think it about sums it all. That's correct. Why you people deserve what you get from Dr. Snowbrown. That's correct. Now, thank you very much for your time. Goodbye. And keep safe. And what? That's correct. And don't tell me how to run my life, or let alone my church TV. And stay out of it. Stay out of my kingdom. Get your own. In Jesus' name I pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen.